Okay, so for the panel, we have a lot to say, so getting right into it. We kind of just wanted to talk a little bit about Right Off because obviously, it's been now a good month and a half since the finale aired. Loved, hated, there's a lot of opinions about the finale. But I know personally, I've had a varying a lot of different thoughts about it, and some of my opinions have changed, some of them have stayed the same. But having had this time to process it, some things have altered. So I thought that this would be a good opportunity for us to share what are our thoughts now that we have had this time. So maybe we could just kind of start by doing that.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure that I'm necessarily, we really should have started on the other end because Mallory's really smart and Jocelyn too. Me and Concepcion are just
very tough.
Hanging out.
It's very tough right now.
None of us have had enough coffee yet, though, in the interest of full disclosure.
It's a good point. It's a fair point. There's a million things I could say about it right now, and I'm sure that over the course of the next 3 days, we will all get to talk about these things, and you included, because, part of the reason that we did this and we wanted to put this together with Mischief is to get together and talk about these things, and whether it be things that we enjoyed or things that were painful or things that we didn't quite understand or questions that we had. And, I think that when people come to, I said this in the last panel, when you have Game of Thrones fans, right? And then you have fanatics, and then you have people that come to cons. And the con people are my people. And so I think it's very, very important that we all get them out, and it's not, my opinion or just anybody else's opinion for that matter, it's yours too. I felt like, for the most part, I felt somewhat complete with the way that it ended. I have a lot of questions. I think we could have done at least another season, if not two, describing some things. I think you'll hear the word rushed quite a few times over the next 3 days.
Yes.
But all in all, I understand that there are factors that are behind the scenes that we don't necessarily understand, that probably that do encapsulate a ton of people that worked on this show and the production and the contracts and all of those things. And while I believe that it's not exactly what we all would have wanted, I think for the most part, not entirely, because there are no absolutes, but for the most part, I do feel fulfilled with it, especially the more that I go back and rewatch it. Having said that, there are some things that I catch again that I'm like, no.
They CG'd the water bottle out.
And the coffee cup.
But I'm gonna stop there because I don't want to linger on. But there's just so many facets of the show that we could discuss in this, and we simply just don't have enough time. We have 43 left. So, Jocelyn, you go.
Meta, simply don't have enough time.
Right. Okay, so now that I've had a little bit of distance, I think there are two things that I've truly grown to appreciate now that the series has ended. The first, I think, relates to the Starks. Actually, both of my points relate to the Starks, so spoiler alert. But, it's thinking back to season 1 and Ned's beheading, it just seemed to kick off a series of nonstop L's for the Starks. There was Ned, there was Kat, poor Rickon, who so gets lost in the sauce when we talk about the dearly departed. And so going into the final season, I was really worried, this is a show that has basically ripped out my heart, stomped on it, thrown it back, alley-ooped it to someone, dunked it, and just left me destroyed at times. So I was very much bracing myself for more loss and more suffering for the Starks. And I think one of the delightful things about the finale is that if you were a Stark fan, you felt pretty good. We had Queen Sansa over her own freaking kingdom. Arya is going west of Westeros, and Arya lived. I will never forget my very first time at Con of Thrones. I went to an Arya panel, and Susan, I think you were on this panel.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And one of the panelists said, oh yeah, Arya's gonna totally die. She's just gonna show up somewhere dead in the snow with Needle, because I think that's reference to something
probably me.
said in the books. And no, I know who it was because I, like Arya, have a list. So I know it wasn't you. I would have remembered that. A girl has a list. Wasn't you. And so, thank you. I have a list. So, it was just so fulfilling at the end to have the Starks be in a place where, one, they're alive, so woohoo for that, and two, reasonably in positions where they can actually experience some joy at long last. And I didn't need to see it all play out. I was fulfilled just knowing that that possibility was there. So that's something I've appreciated. And then I think the second point would be John, who, you know, his storyline always resonated with me because he was treated so horribly in the beginning because he was a bastard. And I'll give a personal anecdote. I'm a bastard, and I had been teased about that. So he was like one of the, you know, characters that I just initially just sort of connected to. And I love that final farewell scene with Sansa, Bran, Arya, and Jon, because to me it showed that he has family. He has family that loves him, you know, unconditionally. They don't care about his parentage. They don't care, you know, who his mom or who his dad is. These are people that will always be there in the world to love him and care about him and support him. And I think those are two deeply satisfying aspects of the finale.
Yeah.
I think, you know, with all the talk about the pacing of how we got to the finale, I think the thing that I mostly think about when I think about how we arrived at the ending is that I just kind of hope that, so it's July 12th at about 11:16 a.m., and I'm hoping that right now, somewhere in Santa Fe, George R.R. Martin is walking to his writing desk with a big cup of coffee. Maybe his third cup.
George is watching Daniel Jones tape right now.
Maybe his
right now.
Maybe his third cup of
Gearing
coffee.
up for training camp.
Maybe his third cup of coffee. He's had the internet disconnected at his writing home. And he's just sitting down at his word processor and just plugging away. Just getting at it. Getting at it. That is my macro takeaway right now. I think that, you know, to Oz's point, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of moving parts in making any TV show, to say nothing of a TV show that is like filmed in multiple countries by a vast crew at any one time, like with a very hard deadline, with actors that, you know, are under contract and making millions of dollars. Like, it's just difficult. So there's like a lot of things that we don't understand that went into the production of that. However, you know, this story sprung from the mind of a person who ostensibly could finish it, and I hope that that happens. I really deeply hope that that happens. Mallory?
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
It really was.
Very optimistic.
Yeah.
So hopeful. I think of, you know, First Reformed and the message about how hope and despair are so deeply connected inside the human heart. My macro thought, as we have moved further and further away from the finale, the end of season 8, the end of Game of Thrones, is that as many questions and laments as I still have, and I look forward to discussing them this weekend here with you all. I love Game of Thrones.
Love it.
And it's an incredibly, it's just been an incredibly important part of my life, and I think all of our lives, and the further away from it we move, perhaps counterintuitively, the more grateful I feel that we got to experience it at all, and certainly that we got to experience it together. And, you know, I think that the thing that we talked about this a lot on the finale, around the finale, but I find myself thinking the most about old Nan and her message about stories. You know, the stories wait, the stories are. And I think the fact that we have questions and we have concerns comes from a place of love and investment, and that's fine and good. But mostly I'm just trying to remind myself that the true gift is that the story was in our life at all, and that even though the show ended and a certain phase of Thrones fandom and the Thrones experience concluded, nothing about what Thrones means to us has to ever be over. And I think this weekend and being here with all of you is, you know, proof positive that it's going to be a really special part of our lives forever, and it's always there waiting for us to return to, and every time we do, we're going to discover something new, and that's really thrilling to me, and I just find myself incredibly grateful for the community and the story and all of the things that I love about it, which I do find myself thinking about way more often than the things I didn't love as much.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yes, well said. I think we all get kind of bogged down sometimes in the looking for the negative, which is natural because we want to be able to discuss those things. But sometimes I think we just get so frustrated, reasonably, with certain aspects that we forget to sort of take accounting of the things that we love and actually enjoyed. And sometimes, the internet does become like an echo chamber, and instead of just having a regular conversation, like talking to my buddy here about it, and usually you would just talk about, I didn't like that particular scene for whatever reason, and then you just walk away from the conversation. You have that conversation on Twitter, and then you have 50 people repeating that same thing back at you, and it just becomes overwhelmingly negative, and it becomes a kind of different experience, and I think that's what it's been like for the last couple months. So I've found like a lot of people saying they just kind of had to step away from the fandom altogether, just because of that, because they still wanted to retain kind of their enjoyment of, the show and the fandom. So I think that's been something that's been my experience. But I think my own particular experiencing of the finale, now that I've had some time, and some distance from it, my general opinion of the finale at this point is that it is fine. It's not the greatest finale, but it's not the worst. I feel this is the comparison I made probably a few weeks ago, and I realized like how close a comparison it was. And like this is exactly how I felt about the Buffy finale, which is that when I initially watched it, and Buffy, I should say, is pretty much my all-time favorite TV show. When I first watched the Buffy finale, I was like, oh, okay. I was kind of like, I guess it's good. But it felt a little underwhelming. I did not appreciate how they killed a major female character. It felt distasteful. There was some distinct parallels. But now that it's been, like 15 years or so since that finale aired, I actually have grown to, I would say almost love it. It's not my all-time series finale of a show. That's probably Star Trek: The Next Generation. But I mean, I have grown to, deeply appreciate it and love certain parts of it. So I feel like, that's probably a place I could in time come with this finale, just because we're so raw. So that's kind of how I've been feeling about it. And it's not, I've seen the finale multiple times. Like anytime I do a write-up for watchers, I pretty much instantly watch the show about 3 times in a row, just because it's how I work. It's a little tedious, but that's how we do it. But so I've seen it a whole bunch of times since then, and I think in time I'll grow even more. So things just take time. It's an intense experience we've kind of all gone through. So I'm kind of interested to see where we'll all be like 1 year from now. So now that we're at this point, I'm kind of interested to hear from everyone, just I guess a couple of different things. What are kind of the things, taking away from the finale, what are the things that you have just not been able to sort of shake, or opposite-wise, what are some other things maybe that you have been able to make peace with? Just some, thoughts on the finale.
Let Mallory go first.
Oh.
Ooh, we're putting the spot on Mallory. What'd she do?
What can't I shake? So everything I said 5 minutes ago was nonsense. The list of things I can't shake is...
The positivity portion is now over.
Yeah. I'm like Hermione, like a little extra scroll of parchment longer than the assignment.
Bring it.
Things I can't shake. We're going to talk later in this panel about Bran and Dany, so I think we won't do that here. You have that to look forward to. Stay tuned. And, I would put a couple other, major characters and major plot lines in my consideration set. Tyrion, Jon, not choosing to exile himself, but rather being sent, things like that. I really, I won't, for everyone's The time management and everything, I won't mention Ghost right now, but protect him at all costs.
Yeah.
For the sake of everyone, I'll save that for later. You can come to my personal TED Talk or listen to Binge Mode. But what I'm actually going to go with here for the thing I can't shake is all of the smaller stuff. Because what I find myself thinking about so much is that we just didn't get to learn anything about it at all. You know, and I'm really hung up on that. Like, Bronn is going to beggar the realm. Bronn is
it's a very tough choice.
That feels really
Bronn as Master of Coin is a very tough choice.
How did that come about? What was the conversation that led to that? You know, I really want to know. Sam, for example, this is a character that we had invested so much time and heart into, and I think in so many ways, a lot of people feel was, you know, not only the avatar for George R.R. Martin, but for all of us, you know, the regular person who just needed someone to help him believe that he could do it, that he belonged, that he could make a difference. And he's wearing Night's Watch garb until we're 30 seconds from the end, and then he's Grand Maester. He's with Gilly and is having a baby that they're maybe naming after Jon, but we don't know if they did. We don't know where Gilly is or what she's up to, and we don't know how any of that happened. Like, does the Citadel offer a really accelerated course? How did that happen? You know, so those things, those are the things. And because the thing that so many of us love so much about this story, you know, think back to the very beginning and how George set out to write a story that could never be adapted. The scope, the depth, the richness, it's all of those little details that really allow you to fall so fully into the world and convince yourself that these are people in your life. These are real people to us. They're our friends, they're our family, and it's because we understand everything about who they are and how their lives are unfolding. And so that is the thing that I can't shake, is feeling that we lost that toward the end. And also not seeing the conversation where Sansa and Arya found out about Jon's parentage. I will take that to my grave.
That was very tough.
To my grave!
Yeah.
It's extremely tough.
Sure.
I agree with
That was
everything.
like 5 things, I'm sorry.
I agree with everything you said. I think, you know, this is a story that was built on a kind of just like a granular kind of world building, and obviously the show condenses and simplifies a lot of that stuff that comes from the books, but you feel it like through osmosis, the fact that these are characters that belong to families with thousands of years of history that everybody knows about because these are within this world famous people. I think the thing that I can't shake and that I'm honestly mystified by is, so after Tyrion's imprisonment, he comes out, he's got the beard, and so we understand when he comes out that an amount of time has passed.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I just don't understand why. We couldn't have done the same thing with Cersei's baby bump, so it didn't seem like everything happened in the first trimester.
Right.
Like, make it get bigger.
Cersei would have had to have been in season 8 to do that, which is like, another thing.
Just grow it a little, like now it's a little bigger, and now it's a little bigger again, and just, because I understand the fact that we have a certain number of episodes, everything has to fit in there, time has to be condensed. Nobody wants that to happen, but that's the case, and we have to condense time. People have to move extremely quickly across a vast continent, across oceans, they have to cross it multiple times. Okay, that has to happen. But, like with Tyrion and his growing beard, there's ways to signal that time has passed within the world, that there is a constant of time, that time still exists, and people don't just like blip from place to place. And so that was honestly confusing, because every time we go back to King's Landing, I'm like, so wait, how long has it been? And then you have to, like, and then people are like, well, but is she faking it? Because, like, nothing is happening. And it's honestly a good question. I still kind of don't get that. That's the choice I don't get. Like, okay, fine, we're condensing time. But give us a sense that time is progressing within the story so that we understand, can reorient ourselves where we are. I think one of the things that's so great about this show and the books, and that is so evident throughout, is just like a sense of place. I mean, you think about the constituent realms of Westeros and how each of them have their own character. And you understand what that means to be from Dorne, or be from the Reach, or be from, you know, be from the North. And how much it would mean to go from one area to another. And that sense of place is just kind of lost when not only is the pacing condensed, but then the kind of like the heartbeat of time is just kind of like melts away, and you don't understand what it would mean for Jaime to get on a horse alone and ride to the north. That would be an immense undertaking. And that's the thing that that's the thing I really can't shake. Otherwise, you know, again, I love this story, and I think that one of the things that, just to pivot off something that Sue said, I think even when the criticism is like very pointed and overboard and at times like crazy, I think it's important to understand that it does come from a place of immense love. This is a story that means so much to people for many, many reasons. And so they're just voicing their displeasure because something they love has disappointed them in some way. So it's just important to remember that we just all love this story. That's the thing I think about the most.
All right. So I think for me, it's more the thing that I've made peace with. And I guess I should preface this by saying I like Tyrion. I'm a huge Tyrion fan. I'm doing the Tyrion, you know, end of journey panel. That's how much I love the character. That said, I was surprised at the end, after being okay, an all right hand of the queen to Daenerys. I think some of the decisions and some of the advice at the end, you know, there were some missteps there.
My dude caught a lot of L's.
And, you know, it just sort of blew my mind that after he, you know, Jason mentioned him coming out of his imprisonment, that he still had an audience and that people were still letting him talk.
He's in manacles.
It's like, sir,
Deciding the future of the realm.
where do you get the nerve?
Where?
Like,
Sir, where?
how are you still talking?
He's in handcuffs.
And it's not just from Daenerys' perspective, but think about someone like Sansa, who's like, aren't you the same person that interrupted our meeting to give these lofty promises about how the Lannister army is coming to fight the dead? It's like, just, you need to be quiet. How have you not learned at this point to just take a seat?
Yeah.
So that being said, I did ultimately make my peace with that. I was surprised that he ended up being hand to Bran. I'm like, wow, this dude's really failing upwards. But the more I thought about it, I thought it was truly a fitting, you know, we talk a lot about this idea of things being bittersweet, and I think it was a perfectly bittersweet end for someone like Tyrion. I think he'll be a brilliant hand to Bran, but he's basically always going to be the power behind the power. He's not going to have the love and the respect of the people. He's not going to be the person whose name goes down in the books that people look back on and say, you know, without this guy, you know, the realm wouldn't be here, you know, even going back to Blackwater. And there's something very sad and tragic about that I kind of like as an ending for him, and ultimately made my peace with, you know, after getting over the shock, like, wow, he's still at the Small Council table. Despite all of the shenanigans in the last 2 seasons, he's still got a voice at the table and probably running the kingdom based on what we saw at that Small Council meeting, but I think it was a fitting end ultimately.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It does. I'll be quick because I know we got some other things to get to real quick. But and what I'm about to say is not going to make me very popular with some people, and I do apologize in advance. And it's not so much about the character, but it's more about the reaction or lack thereof. But I had a hard time with understanding why Sansa decided to keep the North independent when her brother had just become king and everybody else had decided to stay. But what I really had a problem with was the lack of reaction from, namely, Yara, who I would have said,
the POD.
you know what, if you ain't in, I ain't in.
Yeah.
So that one confused me, and I mean, you know, if it wasn't Bran that was king, let's just say that they made hot Robin Arryn king. I could
Neville
see
Longbottom glow up.
I could
Breast
see
milk, it does a wonder.
Right, see, that's the thing. I can see Sansa saying, "Hey, Robin, go suck a boob. We'll be in the north." But it was Bran, so that's the one thing that, I mean, and there's other little things, but that one I was just like, I just not sure. I know that she wants to be queen, and I know that the North was independent kingdom for a while, and I'm just for disclaimer purposes, I'm a show viewer only because this lady over here wouldn't let me read the books till it was over.
It's over. Start reading.
It's over. I can start now. But I don't know. That was just the one that like hangs with me, and I have a hard time with.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. I'll keep it very short because I want to I want us to move on to some big issues we need to talk about, big fiery issues. The thing it's very hard to get over, and I'm just probably never gonna deal with Jamie, just this very confusing character arc based in many books and many seasons. And I get why he would still want to protect his sister. I totally get that. And I have written about it, and I have thought about it, and I've read so much like meta and discussion about it. And I get aspects of it, but ultimately it just sits wrong with me. Like the fact that it ultimately amounts to nothing. Like it just feels wrong. So you know what I mean? Like it just makes you feel sick that like it all circles back to nothing. And that it just doesn't feel right to me. And I'm not saying that every character arc has to end in a super happy ending. Obviously not, because Song of Ice and Fire exists. But like, it just dramatically, it's not satisfying, and that's a problem for me. So that's something that I still haven't reconciled. So yeah, there's a couple, big thing that we have to talk about, though. I know we don't have a ton of time left, but we have to talk about the big old thing happened, though. So Danny. Danny had some major moments in the last couple episodes. So I think throughout the series, people are like, we're always sort of speculating, the madness of the Targaryens and what's going to happen. Is Danny, they say that there's a coin toss of the Targaryen. Are they going to be mad or great? And is she going to be both? And a lot of people are sort of angry about that idea and say it's misogynistic, or some people are like, well, no, it's not. There's a lot of debate, and it's a very, very difficult topic. But the story ended the way it did, and she destroyed everything. But she did also, free a lot of people. I mean, she did a lot of great things, but then also did a lot of terrible things. So I guess, what is your reaction, to that ending? Do you feel okay with it? Do you hate how it went down? And then, of course, Jon killed her. So what's your feeling about it now?
Mallory, you want to start again? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, no.
I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. I'm not at all. All right, so, and I'll be quick because I really want to hear everybody. I want to hear everybody's view on this. But it became very, very clear to me in the first episode of season 8 that what the writers were trying to do they were trying to establish this deep, we were made for each other love between Danny and Jon. And for whatever reason, mostly because of time, we think, for me, they never could really establish that. There was a point where they go ride on the dragons, right? And then they go to the waterfall. And it was like this Disney-esque moment where everybody was supposed to be happy, and Danny looks at him and says something like, we could live here for 1,000 years, and Jon says, well, then we would be old.
John's like, I had a girlfriend once who also said something like that to me in front of a water feature. The only place I know how to have sex is in front of water or on water. Continue.
He has a type.
So she says, for me, it was just, it was so out of context for her to say, wouldn't we want to just go live here forever? We could hide or whatever else. And I'm like, no. All she's wanted from the beginning is the Iron Throne. That's what she's really wanted, correct? Yeah. Okay. So, but I think that's part of where maybe it somewhat fell short, was because that was never really established. I never really felt like they were in love, like Jon and Ygritte were in love, or like Danny and Drogo were in love. I never got that warm, fuzzy feeling when I saw them around it. It always felt weird. When I saw them kiss, it felt weird. Granted, I knew they were family. It got away, and and I don't think that part ever meshed, because if you can imagine someone being in deep, complete love with someone, and knowing that that person is working with her and wants to support her and wants to see her on the throne and all those things, and I'm in love, and this is going to be great, and we're going to rule the kingdom together, and I will be the queen and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, he turns around and says, hey, by the way, Sam and Bran got with me last night. We had a beer, and guess what? It's me, baby. So if you sell that part of it, and then you see the turn, I think if you put that in context, it helps it make a little bit more sense. And I just feel because it was rushed, they were not able to complete that. If they'd have done that, I feel like it would have made a little bit more sense. Maybe not enough to make everybody happy, but anyway, that's just kind of my viewpoint on that one particular aspect. Go ahead.
No, I don't think I have a lot to add to this. I completely agree.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily have a problem with her ultimately turning and doing what she did. I just wish that the storyline would have had a little bit more time to cook and develop, and I think it would have been easier to just see it sort of carried out. You know, and I know that some people, you know, feel very upset, you know, because Dani is someone that they looked at as like a hero and felt like she was being set up as a hero, and I think that's sort of a separate conversation that maybe the Dani panel will have. But I think you can like a problematic fave, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Cersei totally blew up a whole sept of people and killed my fave, Marjorie
sure
Tyrell,
did.
and I still love Cersei. And if Cersei had won in the end, I would have been at home, yes, queen. And so I guess my point is, you can have problematic faves. Your faves can take heel turns and do things that are just really terrible, and it's still okay to like them. They're fictional characters, so I think, you know, give yourself some slack and some forgiveness. You know, I guess that was sort of what sort of struck me in the discourse on social media, is that, you know, Dani fans felt like, you know, people saying, oh, what about all these people that have named their kids and their pets Dani? Do it. I mean, you know, it's, if you like the name, you don't have to feel shame about liking a character. What she did was wrong, absolutely, but I like problematic faves, and I really like it when women get to be problematic faves. So I just wish we had more time for the story to develop on a natural course, and I think that it would have probably benefited from several episodes of development.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Put it back into the oven for 10 episodes.
Yeah.
I agree with everything that's been said. And I think one of the ways that the kind of lack of time manifested with Dani's turn is the kind of like interesting dichotomy between what Dani did, which I maintain, and I fervently maintained, that Dani really didn't do that much wrong. Like, yes, there were signs that that the madness of the Targaryens was going to come out, and she had threatened to burn people, but really didn't burn that many people, and they were bad mostly.
No.
They were bad mostly. I mean, you know, like she crucified the slaveholders. Good. Like, do it. Great. Get the hammer out. I'll help. But you know, there's this idea that what she did in Burning King's Landing, which was awful, was somehow the worst thing you could do, while Tyrion's plan, and the plan that everybody loved, all of her advisors loved, was, hey, let's have a siege. We'll starve everybody to death.
Right.
Starve them to death. Mm-hmm. And so as the population is dying and weakening, and as these people are watching their children waste away in their arms, they will become so angry that they will take up arms against the City Watch and the Lannisters, surely resulting in many, many deaths, more deaths, and they'll do our dirty work for us, and then we can kind of sweep in, and all the real estate will still be standing, and that's better than what Dani did. And maybe it's degrees better, but how much better? And I think, like, I was disappointed that part of the debate wasn't discussed within the characters. Like, we're still talking about starving tens of thousands of people to death. Is that not awful? Is that not terrible? Is that not a bad thing? So when we talk about what Dani did, which I agree that that's a place where we probably are going to arrive in the books, should they be written. I think it's important to look at her actions within the context of what other people were proposing and what actually goes on in this world. It's not like destroying an entire town or city or village is like, it's certainly something that would be notable throughout history, but it's not like it's never happened before. People do it. It's been done within this world. So I just think that she even still gets a bad rap for being like, for flying off the handle, when it's like she's just doing stuff that people have done before. Yes, it was bad. She shouldn't have burned the whole city. But Tyrion wanted to starve everyone to death, that's all.
I largely agree. I think that these are fictional characters point is simultaneously like true and also the crux of so much of the despair, is because that's not true to a lot of people and it's not how people feel. And I think that the story is in the hands of people who for a long time made us all feel like they understood and respected that. And so I think there's some sort of like, there's broken trust with people, and that's a real thing for people. And you know, I also feel like one of the special things about Game of Thrones and any story that you love is that you can feel the way you feel about it. It doesn't have to be the way somebody else feels about it. And like, that's important, right? We shouldn't all feel the same way about it. So, you know, I think that this will be an eternal debate. Like, this isn't going away. I think that we'll probably all move slightly toward the middle, whatever your respective position is. But we're going to be talking about Dany and Dany's ultimate arc on Game of Thrones until the end of time, you know, which is also when George will finish the books. My perspective is, again, largely aligned with everyone else in the panel. I have always thought that we were heading toward Dany's turn on the show, and I definitely have always felt that we were heading that way in the books. So much like Bran and a lot of the other characters, I don't object to where we ended up. I just struggle with how we got there, you know, and I think it's a matter of pacing and plotting and ultimately what both of those things feed into, which is nuance, you know, and subtlety and degree. Like, this has never been a story of black and white. It's always, everything has always existed in the gray. And so to turn Dany, a character for whom the line between conqueror and liberator was always as thin as one of her strands of silver hair, always, into somebody who would just in an instant after she heard the bells toll burn in legions of innocents, I actually don't buy that. I don't think that that's something she would do. Do I believe that just looking at the Red Keep, which is the explanation that we ultimately got, would send her into those throes? I don't. You know, I think that that diminishes her strength as a thinker and as a tactician and a strategist, and also somebody who, you know, I can't get through a panel without quoting my man Jorah, like, has a gentle heart. Also has the viciousness that's necessary to achieve your end in that world, in the Land of Ice and Fire. But, you know, for me, and I think for a lot of us, I don't object to Dany having this kind of fall and heading on this path. I just wanted it to be more of a Shakespearean tragedy. You know, the idea that you spend your entire life trying to get to one place. And yes, it is the throne, but more than anything, it was home. It was the idea of home. You know, for book readers, like, think about how Dany always harps on the red door and what the red door represented to her. You know, this idea of a place where she could feel safe and she had some semblance of belonging. And then you couple that with purpose, and she fights and fights and fights to get there. And then as soon as she finally does, as soon as the thing that she spent her whole life fighting for is within reach, everyone else just wants to give it to the bro, and like, they take it away. That is devastating. And I think that to act like it wouldn't have a drastic life-altering impact on every single person is like a fallacy. I just wish we had more time.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, we have just a few more minutes, so I just wanted to ask one more quick question, I guess. Do you all think, so with the ending, of course, we mentioned, you know, Bran, you know, throughout the series, Dany brought up the sort of the issue of breaking the wheel. So with King Bran and how they're electing occasionally a new king, I guess, do you think they have broken the wheel with this new system in place?
Should I let my dogs vote? Of course.
Oh, I hate that guy.
I mean, like, there's going to be a civil war as soon as Bran dies. You know, this is not going to last. As we mentioned, Bran will bankrupt the realm within months. Where's the Iron Bank? They're like, hey, where's my money? Yeah. There's a lot of problems. The Iron Islands certainly would be like, why are we not free? Like, there's just a lot of issues that will arise the moment that Bran passes away, and then we're just going to be the wheel is going to be right back rolling on.
But that moment is probably a long, 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 long ways away if we think of how long Bloodraven was around. And of course, that's another thing that we didn't spend time on. But so
he was connected to the tree, though.
If you have another male monarch who's just going to be kicking it longer than any of his predecessors, then by definition, you have not broken the wheel.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I mean, I don't think they.
That's why Sansa left. She can't be drawn into a battle when Bran dies.
I mean, I would imagine, so the person said that's why Sansa left, so she can't get drawn into a battle when Bran dies. Like, I would imagine, like, look at this from the perspective of some other place in Westeros, not in the north, you know, from the Stormlands or something. You'd be like, are the Starks have they not secretly taken over this entire realm?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, so the north gets to be free, Bran is king.
And Jon's in the far north.
So, like, did they not win? They are, you know, pretending that this is more egalitarian era, but really they are in control of everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely not a good system. I remember watching it, and like, it's not that. I mean, obviously, Bran has the ability to tap into all kinds of incredible wisdom, but we've established that he's not. He's just not attached to human beings, so that's a problem. And yeah, I mean, I know that obviously they're riffing on, you know, a sort of representative democracy and all that jazz, but it just isn't gonna work. So it's cute, and I don't know. I mean, we know to some degree they got final conclusion stuff from Martin, and, you know, spoiler alert, like, it is going to be King Bran, but we don't know how many ultra-specific details came from Martin. So I'm just kind of wondering, of that final, you know, council, how many of those details came from Martin, and how many is just D&D, like, adding color, you know? So that's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out in the books.
Yeah, let me be clear. Like, my comment was not about Sansa. It was about the sustainability of the system more than it was anything else. Because, you know, here again, I think Yara went home and went, wait a minute, what just happened? So,
yeah.
I mean, I'm not even sure. What is the system? Again, like, I guess we're just going to do great councils and then elect somebody. But like, is there another like magic boy around?
Yes.
Right.
right. Yeah. Where do you go from there?
Right.
The magic voice system. So we have just a few minutes left, but we could take one or two questions from the audience. There's a microphone up here. Does anyone have any particular questions? That would be super fun if anyone wants to step on up. Come on up to the microphone, please. Yay! Just step on up to the microphone and introduce yourself, and we have time for just a few questions about the Endgame. Thank you. Hi.
Hey, my name's Heidi, binge head. So my question is, so with season 6, they went past what Martin already had. But one of the exciting things was we got a lot of those bookends and a lot of those like touchbacks to the what happened at the beginning, which was exciting because it closed arcs or extended arcs or showed growth in the characters. But then it kept happening in season 7 and then season 8. So do you guys think that was the writers not really knowing how to continue what they had, and relying on that as a mechanism to be able to continue the plot? Or what are your thoughts on that?
It's a thing we noticed as well. I think that I think that they probably felt like it was doing two things. One, displaying an deep understanding of the story, and also like a bit of fan service. Like, here's the characters doing the thing that you remember them doing. The problem is when you have that increased timeline and you're just doing it all the time, it kind of feels like rep theater Game of Thrones, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it did start to feel, I think, overly self-referential. I think that, like you noted in season 6, and then even early in season 7, you know, when Arya says, you know, that's not you to Nymeria, for example, and you're thinking back to her saying that's not me to Ned, that's like pretty thrilling, actually. But then when she's like, Gendry, my guy, that's not me. Now, honestly, I also loved it then because that was just an iconic moment. But it did start to feel the overly self-referential and repetitive nature of the self-referential tendencies. Like, we have really not a lot of time here, and we have a lot of story to get through, and so every time that you're repeating something that we've already heard, that's by definition, it's a math equation at a certain point. Like, it's by definition coming at the expense of something else you're never, ever going to get.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Next question.
Knights of Summer.
Yeah, that's right. Who is the toughest warrior, in your opinions, in Game of Thrones? By the way, I'm Aaron from Ohio.
Ah,
Toughest.
cool. Toughest warrior. Now, do they have to be like a knight with a sword or just any kind of warrior?
Fight to the death with prep. Toughest warrior. Go.
Do they have to be alive still?
Batman's not allowed to fight. Also.
Oh, look at him presenting.
That's actually a really good answer. Round for king.
Oh my goodness.
I'm just interested to see what you guys think.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I hate Gregor Clegane, but he's pretty hard to beat. I don't even know how the Hound did it, to be honest. I mean, if there hadn't been a falling building, I'm not sure how that would have gone down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Brienne of Tarth, undefeated.
Yeah.
Count them up. Those are all W's, folks.
It's Arya.
I was thinking it's Arya. She's like, yeah. Arya has my vote.
Come on. Water dancer, faceless man.
Yep, mine is Arya.
Sorry, Lancel Lannister.
Okay, unfortunately, guys, we're all out of time. I'm sorry, we're out of time. We have to move on for the next panel. Thank you so much. Thank you for all your questions, your amazing audience. Thank you, everyone.